We've got about as many people as we're going to get, so I wanted to try and get started, so if y'all could find a seat. I will do a very quick introduction. My name is Jason Preem. I'm from a nonprofit called Impact Story. I'm going to be joined, or I will be joining, depending on look at it, Michael Habib from Web of Science, and we're going to be talking a little bit about open access and making open access more discoverable by putting it into researcher workflows. So I'm going to talk, we got 40 minutes, so I'm going to talk for probably about 15 minutes. Mike's going to talk for about 15 minutes, and we'll have another 10 minutes for questions. And of course, you can grab us after the talk if you want some more in-depth discussion. So let's get ahead and get started. I want to talk about three main things today in my short little talk. The first is that I think open access is doing a great job of solving the access problem. I'm really excited about that. However, I think that OA does have a discovery problem, and I think that we can solve this discovery problem by using this tool that we built called OA DOI, which is going to be being used in Unpaywall. It's going to be used in link resolvers, and it's going to be used in academic search. And I'll get a little bit more into the details of that as we go. So first of all, pretty excited about how good a job OA is doing. I'm an OA advocate from way back. I don't know how many people here. In fact, I'm curious, how many people would call themselves an OA advocate? Okay, fair. Wow, a lot of people. Great. A lot of people maybe not sure, or maybe just strongly against OA. I'm not sure. But there's plenty of room for all opinions for sure. And I think we're solving with these sort of four kinds of open access. And three of them you may have heard of if you're in the open access kind of world, and one of them you may not have heard of. So let's talk a little bit about those. So green OA, of course, open access that is on a server somewhere. It's been self-archived by the author. And green OA, I think, is doing a terrific job, particularly because of the mandates we're getting, right, from PubMed Central, sorry, not from PubMed Central, but from the government, mandating people to put in PubMed Central. That's been going on for a long time, but it's being joined by a number of federal agencies in the US. There's also mandates in Europe, this Europe 2020 initiative, super exciting, where everything funded in Europe is going to need to be open access. We've got services like Core with 10 million records, OpenAir with 22 million records, and Base with a whopping 116 million records. These are all fully open access records, right? Some of them may not have all the full text, but they're open access and we can read them. It's really exciting. Then we got Gold OA. Of course, again, probably most people here are familiar with that, so I'm not going to spend much time defining that. But it's pretty exciting. We got 10,000 articles in the directory of open access journals, right? So these are open access, and they've been through some sort of a kind of vetting process to look at the quality of the journal. And we got so many of these, right? And then there's another 10,000 that aren't in DOAJ that are open access, but they maybe haven't gone through this whole vetting process or whatever, but they are actually free to read for anybody. So 20,000 open access journals, that's really exciting. I think that's fantastic progress, especially if you consider there were zero, right? Like not that long ago. And then finally we got hybrid OA, right? Again, a lot of people maybe, kind of some controversy about hybrid. Some people think maybe it's better, maybe it's worse. Not necessarily here to take a position on that today, other than to say, if you are interested in things becoming open, open online, open free to read, then hybrid is doing you a favor, right? Because we can say that it's profitable for publishers. Publishers are investing in it, excited in it. And again, whether that's necessarily the best road or not, it definitely is making a lot of things open. And finally, we have this bronze OA. This is something that came out of a paper that I and several co-authors did from a number of universities, very big authorship team, which we're defining as, some people call it public access other times. And when we're talking about bronze open access, we're talking about something that is open on a publisher page, but it doesn't have that sort of open access license, which means we don't maybe necessarily have good confidence it's always going to be open, right? It could just disappear tomorrow. It's sort of open at the publisher's pleasure. There are quite a lot of bronze OA articles, right? So they're maybe not quite as desirable or quite as appealing as an open access modality, but there are a tremendous number of them. In fact, there's more bronze OA than all these other kinds of open access put together. So quite a large number. And quite a lot of these are publisher-backed content, and they're probably not going away anytime soon. So I think there's a lot to be said for these. So when you put all these together, all these different kinds of open access, we're looking at like half the literature available to read for free. And I want to think about that for a second, half the literature. What that means is we are very close to a time right now when toll access is the exception and open access is the rule. Right? After decades and decades of, well, of course, you would have to pay to read it. No one's going to let you read about the world for free. No, you got to pay money, obviously. We're moving from that world to this new world when it's like, well, obviously you can read it. Why would we hide this wonderful, wonderful results of taxpayer-funded research? Why would you hide that behind a barrier? Yeah, some people are. That's weird. But mostly it's open access. So we're moving from this default total access world to this default open world, and I'm so excited about it. I think it's really fantastic. Some figures to back that up, right? You don't have to take my word for it. So there's been some great work done from the Science Metrics company with Eric Archambault there, and you can kind of, I will put these online so you can kind of examine these slides in a little more detail. But basically, the takeaway here is, right, is it's approaching half, and it's going up, right? That's good news. This is some work that Christian Anthelman did. Again, same thing. We're looking at growth, right, from kind of year to year, and by 2020, almost half, right, very close of the literature will be half based on how she's reckoning. Particularly, this is interesting because it's in subscription journals, right? So this is not even counting OA journals. So again, we're seeing terrific growth. And then finally, this is the study that I mentioned earlier that I did with several co-authors, where again, we can kind of see this really clear growth, particularly starting in 1990, in the mid-90s, I guess, sort of when open access in many ways sort of got started taking off. We can see, again, very clear growth in the number and the percent, in this case, the percent of articles that are available openly. And again, we see it's quite heavily dominated by this bronze category. So if we wanted to be real optimists, and I'll give you in case you haven't figured out, a little secret, I'm a real optimist. If you wanted to be a real optimist, you could even project this forward, right? So if we looked at this little curve there, starting from 2000, and you sort of projected that upwards, what would you get? Well, again, if you just sort of did it by eye, and this is not the world's most rigorously mathematical methodology, but it's not hard to believe that we would see continued growth, and if we even did sort of a conservative projection forward, we could see 100% OA by 2040, which from one perspective is kind of a long time, but again, 100% OA, wow, that would be really exciting. And certainly, again, more than half OA much more quickly than that. So again, great news in the growth of OA. So that's kind of my first point. That's the good news, right? But as you know, this is sort of always a catch, right? Because I'm not just going to stand here and tell you good news. Like, that'd be ridiculous. Instead, I'm going to suggest that there's a problem, which is, can people find this OA? If it's open, but no one can find it, is it really open? Can it be read, right? In many ways, it's not. How do people discover this open access? Are they going to a gold open access journal and saying, hey, this gold access journal, what does it have in it that I might be interested in? No, of course not, right? They're searching. The majority of people who want to access the research literature access by search. So you can see all these different ways that people might get at the research. But of course, this enormous one over there, third from the right, is searching for articles on a subject. That's how people tend to encounter a particular article. And discovery of OA is pretty broken. Let me give you a couple of examples. So if you wanted to look at an institutional repository, so I'm not picking on University of Florida here, they're my alma mater, I love them to death, but I just had to kind of pick an example. If I wanted to find open access about something, would I go here? No, probably not. Am I really going to search through thousands of institutional repositories looking for one particular article, one particular subject, or a topic? Probably not, right? It's a lot of work. I'm a busy researcher. That's probably not going to happen. Even this interface, right? There's all these different words and everything. I just want to do my search. It's pretty straightforward, right? Similarly, let's say I could aggregate everything together, right? So let's not just look at one repository, yeah, because that's ridiculous. But let's aggregate all of them together using the OIPMH, and then we can search them all once. So that's something like BASE does, right? BASE does a pretty good job. They're by Bielefeld, I can't pronounce it, university in Germany. But again, this is not the easiest search interface, right? Like, I got to go all the way up here to the top left. I want to type things in. It's got boxes everywhere. It's not the most modern approach because, understandably, they're kind of a small organization. They're a little bit on a budget. They don't necessarily have the technology to put everything the latest and greatest. So again, this is not the most friendly way for me to search as a researcher. How about Google? Google, though, they've got it figured out, though, right? They got all these bulging brains over there in Mountain View, and they're super smart, and they're going to make this all the whole problem will go away. But again, maybe not. So, any astronomy fans here? Anybody like astronomy at all? Good, excellent. A couple of hands. Thank you. You all, 3 people saved me. So, if you're interested in astronomy, you might have heard about a recent finding about terrestrial planets, so that's Earth-like planets, right, orbiting a nearby star, right, Proxima Centauri. Super excited. I'm kind of a sci-fi guy myself. It's like, whoa, we could go to those planets. They're like 7 light years away or something. It's doable. That's so exciting. If you were this sci-fi or astronomy nerd like I am, you might want to search for the paper. Well, heck, man, let me read that paper. That's pretty exciting. I want to find all about that. So you might type in 7 terrestrial planets into your friendly neighborhood Google, and this is what you get. This is the first result. 7 temporal. Great, that's the article. Fantastic, right? Click on that article. Oh, it's total access. It's going to cost you like $40 or something. I don't really want to know that much, to be honest, right? I'm going to go home. It's taxpayer-funded research, and in fact, what's really frustrating about it, in fact, I don't have a slide for it, but I can tell you. What's really frustrating about it is that it's available for free on arXiv. right? It's taxpayer funded, it's completely free, but if you don't know about arXiv, and many people, many lay readers are not going to know about arXiv. They wouldn't go to arXiv to search. So that for them, again, it's lost to them, right? They don't know. Or even if you're not a specialist, right? You might be an academic, but maybe you're not a particular specialist, so you don't know about arXiv. So these are a number of ways that people might try to find open access research, but they're going to find it very challenging. So the question then is, how do we get OA into the researcher workflow? How can we solve these problems with these people who they would love to read it, they have an information need, it's open, so the information is there, but there's no connection, and they don't know where the open copy is. Well, I think we would have to sort of do three things. We would have to collect all the OA to start with, right? So if we're looking for open access, obviously we got to know where it is. We would have to make it easy to build on, so other people can build tools on that thing, right? Search tools. And then finally, we need to engage with partners, people who are already integrated into the researcher workflow. And we need to work with them to help get this information to the researchers. So those are the three steps. Everybody with me so far? It's pretty straightforward, right? Well, this is exactly, as you may have guessed, what we're trying to do with OA DOI. We built this system as an open, comprehensive database of OA options for every single DOA assigned publication, and we're trying to do exactly these three things. Collect all the open access, make it easy to build on, and engage with partners who are already working with researchers, who are already integrated into the research workflow. So let's talk first about that aggregation step. What's that aggregation look like? And apologies for the sort of dense slide here, but I kind of wanted to throw a couple numbers at you just to kind of get a sense of what we're doing here. We do have 90 million articles, so that's every article that has a cross-ref DOI. How about books? Absolutely. Does it have a cross-ref DOI? We've got it. How about figures? Does it have a cross-ref DOI? Then we've got it. How about posters? Does it have a cross-ref DOI? Then we've got it. Every single scholarly object, every kind of object that has a cross-ref DOI, it's in here, right? It's in our database right now, and we can give you a download. 18 million of those have got links to full text. And these are actual links to full text. These are not links to a metadata record of the full text, which there are quite a lot of in repositories. These are links to full text that we have actually downloaded the PDF, checked to make sure it's correct, and we know that it's full text. And I say this is important because a lot of aggregators like Bases, I think one in particular, they've got 100 million things, but only a small percentage of those are actually full text. It includes bronze and hybrid, which is a little bit different from some of the other efforts. Again, so even if it's hosted on the publisher page, we do have a link to that as well. And that's quite a lot, if you recall that graph, that's quite a large percentage of the open access out there. It's not just repositories. And it includes version information. So as we know, again, when things are stored in green, most of the time, it's not the publisher version, right, with the publisher brand and everything else done like that. That's mostly not permitted under the author agreements to archive. Most of the time, instead of the publisher version, we might see the accepted version. So it's word for word identical to what's published to the version of record, but it doesn't have that that handy sort of branding and I guess typesetting, the added value. Some of the added value is not included. And then finally, we've got a lower level, which is just the submitted manuscript. And that's what a lot of times you would see in archive or something like that, right? Where it's not actually the same because it hasn't been through peer review. It's probably pretty close, but it's not exactly the same. So we have that information. So we can tell you for a particular open access article, what version is this? Am I looking at the peer-reviewed version? Or am I looking at something that hasn't yet been peer-reviewed? So we can tell you that, which we've found is important for some people. And then finally, most importantly in my book, it's open, which is to say the code is open. The data is open for non-commercial use. And really importantly, the infrastructure is such that people can easily build on it. So it has a very fast, very open API. And I'll give you some examples of people who are using the API in a second. So finally, we need some integration, right? So we collected them. We made it usable by putting this fast open API, making the data open. And now we need to integrate with people who are already involved with scholars. Because let's face it, people don't know who I am. Scholars don't know who I am. I don't make tools that scholars use. They don't really care. Right? And they definitely don't need an API. They need a thing that they can actually use in their work when they're searching and using the search tools they already did. Right? If I was going to say, hey, I've got this new search tool that all scholars should come and use, and it uses open access, realistically, how many of y'all who work with researchers think that researchers would immediately flock to that new platform? Put them up high, I can't quite see them. Right? Like that's not it's not how people work, right? They want something integrated. So we got 3 integrations that we're excited about, the ways to get this into the workflow. And once I'm done with that, what's my time looking like? A couple more minutes. Thank you, Michael. So first one, Unpaywall. I'm curious, how many people have heard of Unpaywall? Nice, that's fantastic. Great. You all didn't think you were going to have to raise your hand so much. Thank you for flattering me, for indulging me on this hand-raising business. Yeah, so Unpaywall, for those of y'all who haven't heard, it's an extension. It fits into your Chrome. It looks like this. So if you're reading a total access article, you get that little green tab, and that green tab means it is available in the OA DOI database. And if you click on that green tab, you will get the open access version. This is quite different from something like Sci-Hub. Sci-Hub, you will get a version that has been uploaded illegally. With OA DOI, you will get a legal version that the author uploaded as part of in accordance to a copyright agreement. So it's kind of a big difference. We don't include ResearchGate. That's sort of a different set for us. So Unpaywall has been really successful. We're really excited about it. I mean, I guess depending on how you look at it, it's been successful. Certainly successful for us. We're sort of a small organization. We don't normally do things that are at all successful. So this is kind of cool. So 100,000 active users from more than 100 countries. We're seeing terrific growth from that. We're getting 80,000 new usage events every single day. So that means 80,000 people are asking to view an article using Unpaywall. And what's exciting is half the time we're able to say, yes, we could find that article, as we kind of mentioned earlier about the half, particularly since people read newer articles, and newer articles are more OA. We have kind of a felicitous circumstance where precisely the ones that people want are the ones that are open, that we're able to deliver. So we're delivering about half of these 80,000. So that means we're delivering about 40,000 open access articles a day. Again, these are legal articles. And we're getting coverage in all these famous places, which we're happy about. The usage is unsurprisingly sort of concentrated in North America and Europe. But it's certainly plenty of usage from all over the world, and including a lot of particular interest from China, which I found pretty interesting. So the next thing, that's Unpaywall, that's number one. Number two is link resolver. So how many people do know what a link resolver is right here? Wow, that's terrific. I don't have to explain it. I'm glad. When I heard link resolver, I was like, what on earth would that be? So it was very confusing to me, so I'm glad you guys are way ahead of me already. That was never in doubt, to be honest. So what's a link resolver? You guys get the gist. I'm not going to go over that. We are integrated into the SFX link resolver right now, and as well as into a few other smaller and homemade link, sort of idiosyncratic, site-built link resolvers, but SFX is the biggest one right now. We're certainly interested in integrating with other link resolvers, but that's what we've got right now. And so what it does is if the library doesn't own a particular resource, so they've kind of checked all of their holdings, and they came up with nothing, in bad old days, too bad, right? Sorry, user, we couldn't find it. You're going to have to go to ILL. Hope you don't mind waiting like a week. Hope you don't need it anytime soon. But in the new good days, the OA DOI days, instead we could say, lo and behold, it's open access somewhere. We found it on the University of Florida Institution Repository. We found it on Archive. We found it in PMC. We found it somewhere. And now, read it right now. Thanks to the power of open access. We're really excited about that. And it's being very heavily used. So we get more than 1 million uses from SFX every day. So to put that in context for you, the Crossref link resolver system gets between 1 and 2 million uses a day. So it's quite a lot of uses in the scholarly communication world. So we're really, really excited about that. It's used by all these libraries, 700 libraries, including the BL and the UC system. And we think that's a great way to get this into people's workflow. And as a librarian, right, you can kind of look at this and say, maybe I don't have it, but maybe someone does, right? Maybe I can get OA working for me. And then finally, search is the new journal. That's a phrase that I've been saying for a long time, right? I used to be that I would subscribe to a journal to get the narrow vertical sort of look at my interests. But realistically, I'm not interested in a journal. I'm interested in a topic. I want credible resources about my field. If that happens to be in a journal, great, that's terrific. If it happens to be some other journal, hey man, I don't care. As long as it's credible and it's focused on what I'm interested in, that's what I want. Now, how do we find credible things that are focused on what we're interested in? Through search, right? So increasingly, and we saw that graph earlier, scholars access the literature via search. So it's really important for us to get OA DOI into search. And because of that, Web of Science, I think, is a terrific partner, and I have probably put too much stress on our limited time already. So I'm just going to go through these real quick and just mention that we are working with them via a grant. Really excited about that, and Michael's going to tell you a little bit more about the details of that, and thanks to the people who fund us. You guys can save your applause for later. That's okay. Don't worry about that. You won't hurt my feelings or anything.
Thank you, Jason. Jason's given you a really great background of open access in general. I'm going to talk a little bit about how this partnership came to be and where we're going with it and how this is going to kind of play out in practice. So just a little bit over a year ago, Thomson Reuters sold off their intellectual property and science unit. It became Clarivate Analytics. I think that's one of the first steps in how we came to this partnership, because if you look up there kind of at the history of where Web of Science has been, we started as a small independent unit with ISI, and we've kind of grown into some bigger things like Thomson Reuters, and now we're back to being a private organization where we have a little bit more control of our own destiny. We're a more agile new company. That's made it a lot easier to have innovative partnerships like this when we're looking for solutions. Web of Science is the biggest part of this new company. There's just a few things I wanted to mention on this slide as the context. I'm talking about discovery today in Web of Science, but you can see EndNote. You can see how open access would be useful for finding full text there. You can see how this is going to be very useful data from OA DOI to put into lots of different areas within the workflow. Discovery is just one place, and it's just the start. I think another important part of this, of all these different businesses, none of them are publishers. So we're very publisher neutral as a discovery platform, and that's really helped us move forward this partnership as well. Web of Science. You need a strong foundation, and why is Jason so excited about the people coming to, working with us? Web of Science is a very comprehensive search solution. We have millions of users, hundreds of millions of searches a year. Going back to Crossref as an example, we're the largest referrer of Crossref links that's a non-publisher. So one of the main search tools that people are using out there. Oftentimes when you think about Web of Science, you're thinking about that core collection, that traditional citation database. But for discovery purposes, beyond doing the bibliometrics, we're actually significantly bigger than that, 33,000 journals almost. And that includes things like the ScienceOpen citation index, which is all open access itself. One of the things that's really excited about the foundation here is this new collection, which I'm sure our sales team has told you a lot about, ESCI, the Emerging Sources Citation Index, which covers newer journals that just don't have the citation impact yet, as well as a lot of regional journals. All of those means a significant additional number of fully gold open access journals that are getting indexed in Web of Science. So here you can see on the whole platform, we've got 4,300 fully gold journals. Jason was mentioned this is used in DOAJ. That's out of 10,000 total in the world. All of these being in Web of Science, have gone through, especially that 3,300 in the core collection there, they've all gone through a rigorous process with our in-house editorial team, so you know that these are quality, peer-reviewed journals that have hit certain standards. And we've added 2,000 of those over just the last couple of years through this new Emerging Sources Index. So it's just kind of the foundation. We started trying to work at this problem of open access discovery back in 2014. What we had then was DOAJ. We knew we had, that certain number of fully gold journals, and we were able to put a filter in where you could filter out articles that were in those. Now, this actually didn't solve the problem as anyone wanted it to be solved. It was better than nothing, but there were a couple key limitations. If you are a publisher, we're missing all of those hybrid articles. And as Jason showed, that's where most of the actual content is. Publishers are doing good work, making a lot of content freely available through that. We were missing all of that. If you're a green open access advocate, if you're a repository manager, all that hard work you're doing to get people to put their manuscripts in, we're also ignoring all of that. So it was an incomplete solution, and we needed to find customers were still asking, hey, we love this idea that we can filter on OA, but we want it to work. So that's where it was we started to look for different solutions. Do we build it in-house? Do we partner with someone? We noticed that since 2014, other people have been working on this problem too. We noticed, for example, Jason out there in the work they were doing with OA DOI. It wasn't completely where we needed it to be, but it seemed like they were going in the same direction as us. So we started to have a conversation, and yes, we kind of had an idea of what needed to happen next. And we decided that as far as this goes, we can, partnering with them, one, it gets it back to the community. All the stuff that our grant has covered goes back into OA DOI. and can be reused in SFX and wherever else it's being used. But then we also can solve this problem for our users by integrating it in. So there was that first problem, and I'm going to go through some of this pretty quickly because of time, and Jason's already covered a lot of it. Over half that content, if you look here, more than half the content, as Jason said, for this hybrid, the bronze section, bronze covers more open access content than all the other stuff combined. All the open access discovery solutions that have been out there previously were missing out on all this stuff on publisher websites. Over half the stuff. If you look at that second one, this is where Jason was talking about the study of the stuff that people are actually trying to read using Unpaywall. 47% is now discoverable, and you can see that half of that comes from this the new content, this bronze and hybrid content that Jason and Heather are now finding through our grant. It was hidden stuff, now it's there. The other thing, spent a lot of time earlier talking about how everything, all the journals that are indexed on Web of Science, and the reason that people go there is because they know it's quality peer-reviewed literature. When they're looking at an article and they want to link out, they are expecting to get to the peer-reviewed version of that article. We needed to make sure that we had some confidence there. So as Jason was mentioning, there's 3 different ways that they've been doing versioning through our grant. The one of those, which is about finding preprints and things like that, we're going to filtering those out. We only want to be able to filter on and link people to the final version that we have out there. So how is this going to play out once we get into Web of Science? We're only going to be having, well, one, you'll be able to filter your results. Run a search, I can see all the stuff in that's free to read. You'll also be able to link out, and I'll show you that. So this is what it is actually going to look like when this comes out in December. You can see off to the left that filter. It gets hard to notice that's just one filter for all open access. We've got all these different things in here. We've got free to read, bronze, we've got hybrid, we've got fully gold, we've got the green. To your actual researcher, all they care about is there a free thing in there? And we've put that all under this open access bucket. When they're linking out to it, you can see that we are actually calling out, specifically we felt like we needed to call out, and our user research did this, if it might not be that final publisher version. So especially for those accepted manuscripts, the content we believe should be the same, but it might not have all the formatting and stuff. We want to make sure that we're very transparent as to where we're sending people so they know to look for a different copy otherwise. Do researchers actually know what that means, free published article from repository? Our user studies say, nah, not really, but it's the best we could do. And when you hover over that, you get a little bit more information. And they at least know it's also a learning opportunity for them as well. Now the question is, what are the use cases around this? If you're a very serious researcher, of course you can't just filter out things that are not free to read. But there's a lot of use cases where this comes into play. If you're a first-year student, if you're teaching information literacy class to first-year students, and they need 10 peer-reviewed references, Web of Science is the place to search for that peer review. They're first-year undergraduates. They're lazy. They don't want to even bother using that link resolver. They just want to be able to filter on stuff that's free to read, put their bibliography together, and go. So that's one use case. I think the educational use case is a big one here. But also, if you're just going into a new discipline, if you're just getting started with your research and you just want to find some background papers to read, this is another place where you just want to do quick and easy. You need to get to something to start. So that's another use case we see for that as well. Those are like the core researcher discovery use cases, but Web of Science, of course, is used for other discovery reasons. Specifically, people use it to not just find literature, but to understand the literature, because we are such a comprehensive collection with citations and all. So here we will be allowing people to start to filter based on these different versions as well. So you can start to extract some analytics out of that. You can start to see where you can really get, once you combine this search and discovery interface with some of the analytics you can extract from it, you can really start to get a lot of information that used to be really hard to find. So coming in the first half of next year, we have an analyze results tool. It's already in Web of Science. We're upgrading it. Just for context, we're going to make it easier to use, put some visualizations in there that help you understand the literature in your results set, how it's been being used, who published it, et cetera. But you can see how, if you wanted to, for example, run a search for all the literature published by your institution, using our OrgEnhanced, which is our unified organizational name, you could filter through on like just the last 5 years of that information, and then with just the click of a button, you could get the OA breakdown. And you could start to take that further as you think about how we could put this into insights or into more analytical use cases. When you combine, having this burned into our data and being able to slice and dice that data using the discovery interface with some of those other use cases, it gets pretty powerful. So this is something that's new. A study that was done by my colleague in Europe just presented this week in a poster session in Nordic region. She did not wait for the data to get into our set. She actually ran a search, found the Nordic documents in Web of Science, went and hit OA DOI, found comprehensively what was open access, uploaded all that stuff back into Insights, and started running reports. So still, it's a two-step process, but it's something we couldn't do before. So OA DOI was able to solve that, and we'll be able to cut out that middleman and make it really a one-step process once we get this into our data and further downstream later next year into Insights. So here you can see just a nice clean report of all the open access literature that's available across all those different types for the top 16 Nordic institutions. Here you can see for all that OA literature, the category normalized citation impact. So when you start with that discovery layer, but you can start to extract a lot of meaning out of that. It would have taken a very long time to find all this content and know that it was there. I mean, we've been speaking to institutions that are doing this manually, looking for every article they publish to see if there's a free copy out there. Now, just with a click of a button, you're going to be able to do that. You can also then, for example, take all the content from these institutions that's not open access, and you can compare them based on their category normalized citation impact. You can really start to slice and dice and look at it in a lot of interesting ways. And then the one final example there, this is still from that same research, we also have the funding acknowledgement data. So you could, for example, this is now just showing for open access data, which are the funding agencies in this region that are funding open access content. That's a pretty cool way to see it. We could maybe even start to, and this is where we are going to be seeking a lot of feedback from you as to how we incorporate this data into these analytical use cases. Maybe we want to break that down by hybrid and just look at where the hybrid money is going from different funding agencies. But there's a lot of analytics here that we're going to be able to start to get as we work together with Jason and Heather. Thank you. And do we have still? We have time for some questions? Yeah. Do we have there's a mic right there.
This is Athena Hepner from the University of Central Florida. And I was saying I hadn't heard of bronze before this, but it sounds very challenging to track. So how are you keeping that up to date if at any moment the publishers could decide they're not offering that content for free?
Yeah, great question. And that's an important part of what we're doing for sure. We have a number of different ways of identifying something's bronze OA. One is the excellent Crossref API does have some coverage of that. Some publishers are using it, some publishers aren't using it. Where we have it, that is what we use. And we just basically just pull that, so we just keep hitting it again and again. And similarly with checking the actual publisher page itself, that's the other major way that we're doing this. And again, we just sort of have a rolling update that we handle. We're kind of looking at some of the best ways to make that most efficient. Obviously, with 90 million things, it takes a while to get through them. So we're kind of looking at maybe for more recent things, pulling them more quickly, and then older things less, or seeing which publishers are more want to change their stuff more quickly and pulling those more. So we'll probably tweak the algorithm, but the general idea is we're polling, we're checking on the regular. Depending on the journal and the year and stuff like that, I think we should be able to look at updating in the area of weeks to months, certainly not years.
And one part of our partnership that we haven't done too much with yet, but we do think is an opportunity, is that we do have these personal relationships with all the publishers. So if we're seeing something that could be improved, we can help make that relationship happen to actually go to the source and start to solve some of the problems there.
Hi, my name is John Dove. I first have a shout out and then a question. So the shout out is, I think what you're doing is actually what, if we think 15 years ago, Herbert von der Sample approached the problem was called the appropriate copy problem, which was to make sure that people weren't buying stuff they already owned. But today's world, it's really the appropriate version problem. And if you can create a link like an OA smart link, like what was basically the equivalent, That is fabulous. You're right on the right stuff. So one question that came up in a session earlier, talking about some green OA questions, is, so what about usage stats? How does people, both for article metrics and things that are important to the individual author, but also for the journal and the publisher and everything else, how are you doing anything among the tools you're doing that can help aggregate those things coming from these many different sources?
So we are doing some stuff in that area, but not necessarily related to aggregation yet. So in Web of Science, for example, you can already sort based on the Web of Science usage, which is actually fairly comprehensive, 7,000 students worldwide, hundreds of millions of searches across all disciplines. And there we can do some stuff as far as analyzing the usage on our platform. We also are exploring what we can do with EndNote readership statistics as well and get a little bit more into that. I think it would be great if we could start to aggregate some of this usage data from repositories and elsewhere. And I think there's some good Crossref projects that are going to be enabling that soon, hopefully.
So Jason Price from the Skelk Library Consortium. Just a technical question or definition question. How are you separating the definition of bronze content from hybrid content? They're both in the same place. I'm sure you've written about that, but I've missed it. So
yeah. No problem. And if I did write about it, it was probably very dense and difficult to read anyway. It's a great question. And as you point out, as Jason points out, there's no real difference in terms of just to look at it quickly on a web page, right? Same thing. It's a total access journal, but I can read it for free. So that is what both hybrid and bronze, this sort of neologism bronze that we coined, have in common. The difference is the licensing terms. So if it's published on a Creative Commons license and the publisher goes out of business, or they decide they don't want to they just don't want to show it to anybody anymore. They don't actually have to, right? The publisher, there's nothing in the Creative Commons license that requires you to display content. What it does do is it allows someone else to take that Creative Commons licensed content and host it on their own page. And so we can kind of think of there being a legal set of fallbacks associated with CC licensed content. If the publisher wants it to go away, they're not in control, right? I can post this on my own web page and they can't take it down because of this CC license. So that's why we kind of think of that hybrid level as the more desirable kind of open access. Then you have this tier beneath that, this bronze tier, that doesn't have the CC license. Or it has, in some cases, some very arcane publisher-specific license that we're not able to figure out. Or in many cases, we just couldn't find the license. So that hybrid category certainly does, because we're trying to be a little on the conservative side, if we tell someone it's hybrid, we want to be sure that we know. The system cares more about precision than recall. So we've kind of run the precision recall numbers before. So we get about 75% recall compared to Google Scholar and Google. So we actually, someone volunteered to sit through and do 700 DOIs on Google and Google Scholar, and the same ones we ran them through our system. So it took her about, I don't know, dozens of hours. It was obviously a miserable job. So thanks very much to Lisa on that one. And she was basically saying, here are all the open access content, open access copies I could find. And then we run through here. So we got 75% of the manual searches, right? So there's probably some room for improvement. A lot of those are personal home pages, so it's just going to be very difficult for us to ever get it. Some of them are just we screwed up or whatever, right? We'll continue to improve that. We're very happy that the precision was quite high. So the precision is 98%, which means we were only delivering an incorrect result 2% of the time. And we think that's important in the search realm because users are going to lose faith with the system very quickly if they get garbage results back. And so the reason I say all that is, in the same case with the license, if we're able to, yes, we are sure this is CC licensed content, then we're able to say, yeah, it's hybrid. Or, yeah, it's some other idiosyncratic license that maps more or less to CC, then we say, yeah, it's hybrid. If we couldn't figure it out, we take the conservative approach and say, hey, it's bronze. We don't know if it's going to be gone tomorrow.
So I assume you're using automated tools to determine those license terms somehow.
Actually, I am personally sitting down and going through 90 million articles one by one. Yeah,
so
yeah,
what resources are you using for that?
Yeah, it's all home built. It's all like heuristic-based NLP scrapers of the page.
But from where are they getting the data as to how that
from either the
content is
publisher
licensed?
page itself or the Crossref API.
Okay.
Athena Hepner again. So this mic is very high. In the Web of Science, magic. In the Web of Science, it looks like from the filtering you're able to do that you have some sort of metadata that you're working with, that you're not using the OA DOI API call each time. Are you storing some metadata about whether the article is open access?
So yeah, so that's one of the parts of the partnership that's the ongoing part. I mean, the grant itself covered the initial push to find the hybrid stuff and to do the green versioning, but then we're also going to be licensing the full set of data on a weekly basis, and we're burning it directly into the Web of Science data. So we'll have it in there, and that's how it goes into those downstream use cases as well, such as insights and the like. Right now, we're just storing one version, OA version, per article. We're always erring on the side of, if there's a gold copy, if there's something on the publisher website that is the final version, we want to err on the side of that, and we go from there, and we kind of trickle down to, if not that, then we will go with the final published version, on PubMed Central, wherever it might be, and then going down to the author manuscript. We're thinking that probably at some point we're going to have to start to at least put in the data all of that different license and different version information for some of those analytical use cases. But from the researcher use case, they just want to find free stuff. So we're just focusing on one.
Yeah, and that touches on something that we didn't get a chance to talk about, which is the sustainability model behind this. Quite a lot of these sort of open source, open data, blah, 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 bleeding heart things. And I know because I've built a lot of them in my day. And sustainability is always a really big challenge. So at Impact Story, we've been very generously supported by grants from Sloan Foundation, from National Science Foundation, from JISC. But the tricky thing is that none of those organizations really want to support ongoing sustainability of the service. They want you to build something and then maybe build another thing after that, another thing. But in terms of just keep this going, they don't have that. So what we're trying to do is try and kind of do a little bit of a hybrid thing as a nonprofit. We're trying to partner with for-profits, partner with anybody who wants to use the data commercially, try and build a sustainable revenue stream with that we can continue to make this available for free and completely openly to as many people as possible. The API is actually totally free for everybody, including for commercial use. The data dump is the one we're asking for if commercial use. People throw us a couple bucks trying to support the system. So far, we've had a lot of luck with that. Clarivate's been super generous, and a number of other partners will be able to announce those pretty soon.
Yeah, my name is Ralf Schimmer, Max Planck Digital Library in Germany. So we are beneficiaries of the work you've been doing. So we've been using OA DOI quite extensively this year. And we have implemented it in our link resolver, which is SFX. And we do a lot of benchmark studies comparing with other performance indicators and services, such as oaFindr and Base, of course, as well. So we are quite active in that field as well. So that's what I'm going to say. So, and I want to make a comment and to point the key element in what you're doing is, of course, you have to rely on some services such as Crossref. And so then the key issue here is really the quality and the coverage as such. And the question to you is here, have you done already analysis in seeing how many of the articles or DOIs do not come with the right qualifier in the data field about this open access status or not? I mean, we are one of the institutions engaged in the so-called offset agreements. So our publications are made up open access in hybrid journals of those publishers. And in the agreements, we make sure that it's stated that the publishers are obliged to give the status to Crossref. But of course, when we look at the compliance and we check them, we see that they do really their good effort. So it's not that they are just ignoring this, but they are not at 100%, not nearly at 100%. And this is also a very critical thing. So I think this is another thing where we all together in the industry have to develop the sensitivity and the awareness how important this is, because Crossref has becoming, for many other API-based services, a key source of information, and the better this reliability is the same. And the same when what you do in the Web of Science then for the green element, I mean, you can only be as good as what your underlying services are in terms of the coverage. So you have to rely on Base or on other services. And that's a thing of also then constant and ongoing data cleaning, data improvement, etc. So we all have to strive to get closer to the 100% as we can, knowing that we will never ever reach them fully.
Yeah, well, so there's a lot of great thoughts in that comment, and let me get to your question. I just want to quickly hit on a couple of those. One of them is absolutely the first time that we started to do this, we built OA DOI for our own needs. We were trying to make an open access badge for people, and we found it hard to decide which of their publications were open access. So that's why we built this thing. And our first thought was, well, heck, Crossref's got this, we'll use Crossref, right? But as you mentioned, the coverage of this is very, very limited, very, very limited. Moreover, there's not any particular effort to include Greeno access in that right now. It's more built around hybrid and what I'm calling bronze. And so, yeah, in terms of coverage of what you would get from the Crossref API versus what you get from oaDOI, it's more in like the 20% or something range of what we would have. So it's very limited. At some point, hopefully, they will have complete coverage, and at that point, maybe we can go away. And I'm perfectly open to that idea. Mostly it was very much, this was built very much out of our own practical necessity. We thought, someone's got to have a list of all the OA. That's insane, that doesn't exist. So that's why we built this. So we do use Crossref where we have them. Particularly for research purposes, it's really tricky because it's very publisher-based. And so you end up with, when you're doing research on it, wow, Elsevier is doing great because they actually sort of use the API. And TNF, they don't use it, and then they're doing terrible, right? So you don't really have a good, it's not evenly distributed, the compliance. That makes it even more tricky. So that stuff is something we're working on. You also mentioned, well, actually, I'll just stop there because you had another question. Yeah, sorry. Well, let's talk more after because you raised a lot of good questions. I mentioned it, yeah.
As a librarian, I think one of my challenges in terms of user education is that I'm still having to educate my users on multiple places where they have to go to find the full text. So I really appreciate the integration of Unpaywall into an interface where they can find open access articles where it's available. Outside of Web of Science, I'm still going to have to talk to them about installing Unpaywall into into the browser. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, as an example, yesterday I was in a session and somebody was talking about a recent OA article that came out by Bjork. And so I went to look for it, and there's not an OA version of it, which is really frustrating to find that there's an OA article out there that's not available OA. But it's a Springer article, and my library subscribes to it. It would be really, really cool if there was a way that in the Unpaywall plugin, mm-hmm. I could authenticate my library's resources through that so that it would tell me not only is it available OA, but that if I'm a library subscriber, it would tell me that regardless of who I am and where I am, if I had access, so that I could tell it I'm a user of Murray mm-hmm. State University, and it would light up green regardless of whether or not it's open access or by virtue of my affiliation through Murray mm-hmm. State, or if I'm an adjunct professor at Western Kentucky University. It's
so there's good news related to this, in that there's a different plugin that you can install, which is called Kopernia, it does a lot of what Unpaywall does, but it also lets people store their credentials. And it tries to seek out that. It's a pretty new one. It's really new. It used to be called Canary Has. They just changed their name. But definitely, I'd try that and see how that's working.
Okay, it's called Kopernia?
Kopernio. Kopernio.
Why can't people spell things right?
And let's talk more. It's definitely also a request we do get a lot from Unpaywall. We're trying to be very laser focused on open access Absolutely. Right now, but it's a great request, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about it after the session about what it would take. Or
conversely, if you wanted to just set it up so that it worked with Alma, that would, mm-hmm. That'd be
great. Yeah, let's talk more after the session.
All right, let's talk.
Great.
I think I think we're a little over time actually, and someone else is probably waiting to get in here. So thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you guys very much.